Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good. Looking forward to chatting with y'all.
Excellent. And Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Gentlemen, it's time to crack open a cold one.
There we go. The cold ones are back, and still not breaking the Discord gate, but I can confirm I did hear it on the Ghostbusters Afterlife spoiler cast we did last week, for the proper audio. Before we dive into anything, how's everybody's Thanksgiving?
It was good. Yeah, it was definitely a fun, chill time. I kind of told you guys, like, before we started recording a little bit, I saw Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for the first time.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like, a little bit weird. I'd never seen it, but it was a great movie. Still holds up if anyone was curious, or if anyone was just wanted to watch it for the first time.
Nice. And you, Cam?
I had a great time. I think the highlight, though, of my Thanksgiving was sitting down and being able to chat with my brother and brother-in-law, like, just among the three of us, or just, like, among us as, like, adults. We didn't have to worry about, like, little kids, little ears listening in, and which means that we can have, like, normal adult conversations and not have to worry about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, the thing that we ended up finding out is that we have all actually, over the last while, been on a kick of watching hoof treatment ASMR videos. Like farrier videos, like people who like shoe horses and treat horse hooves, as well as two big guys that we all like are Nate the Hoof GP and or Nate GP, Nate Hoof GP anyway, who's like an American guy, and then there's the Hoof GP, which is a Scottish guy who does it, and it is a cool and fascinating like trade that, like, whether you're dealing with your farrier for horses or you're treating cows, it's very fascinating because when you talk about, like, the domestication of herds and cattle and things like that, you rarely ever think about, like, you see these big dairy farms, and you rarely ever think about, like, oh well, each of those cows have to have their hooves treated and trimmed on a regular basis, and, like, who does that, and, like, getting to see the process of it, but also seeing how these guys and gals out there also, like, when something goes wrong, what they do to treat it, and, like, the care and I wouldn't go as far as to say, like, deep emotional investment, but, like, these are people who care about these animals, and it's so cool to see. A lot of these animals, they're just known for their number, whether they're dairy cattle or they're going to end up one day going off to a slaughterhouse. But to see that these cows have people who come in and take care of them and make sure that they're healthy on such a very base level is really cool. And also, it's really, really cool to see that both farriers and these hoof GPs, they have these, like, sets of knives with, like, hooks on the end of them that are just, like, the coolest thing. You just see them, like, just go at it, and, like, you're like, what in the world? And these things are, like, razor sharp, and, like, they just, like, can peel off, like, the thinnest layer of hoof, or, like, just massive chunks, and, like, you just see, and it's, like, masterful seeing these guys at work. It's the coolest stuff. So anyway, yeah, we had a long conversation about that, which, it was nice that, like, most people were worried about, and I was one of those people. I was worried about, like, politics or something like that coming up and being a problem. But, we just had a great conversation about, like, weird YouTube videos, and the fact that, like, my brother is part of a Facebook group, a Bandit Dad Facebook group, which is basically like a Bluey fan club for the fathers of children who love Bluey.
Okay.
The Disney television show.
Of all the things I could have imagined you would respond to, how was your Thanksgiving? A tangent on ferrying and hoofing ASMR would never in a million years have come up. Largely because I didn't know that was a thing. And then, I just didn't know that was a thing. And it was also nowhere near anything we mentioned before we started recording. So you just like, I kind of, for like the first 20 seconds, I thought this was going to be like a weird, like setup for a gag that you were going to like do or something.
No gag.
And I was like, no, he's just really, he just really likes this thing. And apparently, as does a whole bunch of other people in his family. All right. Oh, okay.
I like that they all stumbled on it like individually though.
Yeah. But you mentioning that did remind me of one of the other things. So I watched a lot of movies. I didn't really do anything with the family over the holiday. But you mentioning a farrier, I did watch A Knight's Tale on Netflix. I went back and like rewatched A Knight's Tale because I re-upped my Netflix so I could watch Tick Tick Boom multiple times in the last week. And then like A Knight's Tale was also recommended and is like leaving at the end of the month or whatever. And I was like, I haven't watched A Knight's Tale in a long time. I really like that movie. And much like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I think it still holds up pretty well.
It's a great movie.
Especially
I love that movie.
Like seeing like all of kind of Heath Ledger's crew is like the King Baratheon from Game of Thrones. It's Alan Tudyk. It's Paul Bettany. And it's like they like remembering that this was the first thing I saw all of them in. And just being like, yeah, good for them having these great careers. I also went
it's a pretty legendary cast when you like look at it and think about it.
Yeah.
Like Paul Bettany was hot off of Wimbledon.
I think this was before Wimbledon.
Is this before Wimbledon?
I think so.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so like if that predates Wimbledon, then there you go. You have Alan Tudyk, who had yet to do Firefly and really blew up in the nerd sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Mark something is the guy who plays
Mark Addy.
Mark Addy. Yeah, this is before he did the Full Monty.
Mm.
And so like this is before like in that he blew up over that. Like this is it's very fascinating when you think about like, oh yeah, no, like all of those main core group of people all blew up to be like really like legendary actors.
Yeah. Yeah. Wimbledon was a few years later. Just look that up.
Years later. So there you go. Yeah. So predates Wimbledon, like before Paul Bettany became a leading man. And before he was in A Beautiful Mind, which is like probably in my opinion still like his best role that he's ever done. A Beautiful Mind is just such a great film.
The Full Monty actually did come out a few years before.
Did it?
Tale,
okay.
So, but I would not have seen The Full Monty. So, makes sense that I still. I mean, like Full Monty came out in 1997. I was 12, so it was not really up my alley. I have since seen, I think, a musical version of The Full Monty. Yeah, I've seen the Full Monty on stage in the time since, but had not seen the original film. But yes, Mark Addy was in that a few years earlier.
Frank, I can see your confusion. I'm going to break down in less than 90 seconds.
I will break it down in a sentence. It's Magic Mike, but 15 years earlier and without
Channing Tatum.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's about factory workers who get laid off, and like it's a whole thing. And the Full Monty itself is an expression about whether or not a male stripper is going to show his junk.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect it to go that direction. I'm going to be honest with you because, I have not heard of this movie. But, that is definitely an interesting movie for sure. Yeah. Sounds like it was ahead of its time.
It's a film about masculinity. So, like, Magic Mike is about, like, a lot of stuff. But the Full Monty was more about, like, blue-collar masculinity in changing times. Like, what does it mean when a man's worth is a man's worth be more than just, like, the food he can put on the table? Like there's a lot of stuff about it that's like it's very, very good.
But in the marketing for both movies, it was about male strippers. It was about men stripping to get women to the theaters.
Well, for the Full Monty, it was a one-night show, so it's like come see these hot guys that you've always wanted to see naked. Where it's in Magic Mike, it's like that's a business, that's an industry.
Yeah,
it's the sex work industry, and like a part of it that nobody really talks about. And like Channing Tatum can't get a freaking home, like can't get a business loan because he's a male stripper and that's his like source of income. It's that's a whole thing. Mm-hmm. Magic Mike is its own thing. It's all convoluted plot around getting an excuse for hot dudes to take off their clothes.
Yeah. Anyway, so in addition to A Knight's Tale, I also went on Thanksgiving Day. I went and saw Encanto. Really
Nice.
enjoyed that. Very solid new Disney. It has music by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which means I definitely missed a whole bunch of lyrics the first time around, and very much look forward to being able to watch it in the comfort of my own home with closed captions, so I can see what everybody is saying. But lots of great characters, lots of great like character dealing with their insecurities songs. And Stephanie Beatrice is the main girl, Miranda, and she's great as always. John Leguizamo's in there.
Nice.
Hells yeah.
Yeah. Lots of good performances in that one. And fun twists and turns to the story.
John Leguizamo, man, that man's is just a treasure.
Indeed.
Treasure person.
And then I went and saw Ghostbusters Afterlife for a third time, but with my dad this time. And he really enjoyed it. And I had pretty much the same reaction I had when I went with you, Cam, is that is a fun movie once you know what's going on to go see with a friend and just kind of like enjoy their reactions to all of like the big moments of that. And so, yeah, I had that same kind of vibe with seeing my dad and just getting to hear his laugh at the moments I was like expecting to hear his laugh at. Shout out to the holiday weekend. So today we are going to be talking about, it's kind of like our Game of the Year catch-up episode. We've been playing some games from earlier in the year, or otherwise, but largely that. So I'm going to kick things off talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, which I finished this week, and Frank and I talked about a few weeks ago. So I'll just kind of add my thoughts to that. Frank finished Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, so we'll kind of do like a reversal of that. Cam has been continuing with Tales of Arise. I played some Loop Hero. Frank has some updated Yakuza thoughts. And then Cam and I are both kind of preparing for Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, which is coming out here in a few days at time of recording, basically. So that's kind of the plan for the show. If you want to hop to any of those subjects individually, time codes will be in the bottom of in the description of the episode. And once again, if you like what you hear, please remember to subscribe, like, rate, review, share the podcast, all that stuff. This is like the housekeeping is definitely a shorter spiel now that I don't do the Patreon plug as well, but we make it work. So yeah, thank you to everybody for the support on that. So yeah, kicking things off here with Guardians of the Galaxy. We were talking right before we started recording kind of all of our, Black Friday deals that we were getting. And this was one of mine. I picked this up for $30, like I think Monday or something. It arrived like Tuesday or Wednesday. I basically sat down, played the first chapter of it for one of our Let's Plays, and then played the rest of it over the last few days, and then started to replay it to just like clean up the trophies and stuff like that. Do kind of a new game plus run now that I know where like the story's going, all that stuff. And so I could make some of those like big different decisions with Guardians of the Galaxy. It was a fun game. And I definitely, if I hadn't been set up for like, hey, it's a wholly competent game and people are really surprised by that, I probably would have enjoyed it better. But because I had like, that was the expectation that was set, it kind of met that expectation. It was fine. It'll be like, I have not gone through and like ranked my Game of the Year stuff. It'll be in the top 20 list that I eventually do, I'm sure. I don't know if it'll make it up to the top 10, but I enjoyed it fine. It was a good enough game. It had a lot of like buggy things for me.
Yeah.
And not normal bugs of like, oh, audio dipped out or something like that. It was like I would get to a point and I couldn't I would go around a room for like 5 minutes trying to figure out what to do. I've scanned everything in this room. Nobody, like, I have nothing to prompt. What am I supposed to do? Finally, I went to like a walkthrough, and it's like, and like the walkthrough didn't help because it was just like, you'll go in here and you can do these things. I was like, I can't get in there though. What, like, how do I get to that point? And I like reloaded the game and found out that like Rocket didn't do the scripted thing he was supposed to do to like open the doors to like get me to the next point. So I was like, okay, that sucked. And then more frustratingly, fortunately I'd already beaten the game by this point, but like in my New Game Plus run, I like, my original plan was I'm following along with the guide to get whatever collectibles I still need. And I'm just going to play through the whole game again. And I got to a pivotal point where you're basically walking down a long corridor into like a manifestation of somebody's head. And like I reached there were basically invisible walls, and I couldn't complete that part of the gate. Like I couldn't get to the end of the hallway basically. And like it clearly wasn't just me that was affected, because the other AI also like walked around it. But as a character in that moment, you don't have the agency to like walk a different path. You can only walk forward. And so multiple times I like reloaded the save and tried to just walk forward. And every time I hit like this same invisible wall, and the characters walk around and continue on, and they keep like bantering and talking. And they clearly added some scripting in there for like, if you dilly-dally in that section, but I couldn't do it. And so I just couldn't progress. So finally at that point, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to go do chapter select for the last trophies that I need or whatever. And so that was like incredibly infuriating that I'm just like, and I Googled and I couldn't find anybody like identifying the same issue. So maybe I should go report this bug to them of like, hey, I don't know what triggered it, but I could not progress past this point in my New Game Plus run.
It is funny, and it's weird because I also ran into multiple bugs, but those are different than the bugs I ran into. So that, and like you said, that one that no one else has seemed to run into. It's like, it's so weird that it is such a buggy game. Like, and it's not in the way that it's unplayable, at least I guess in that case it is, but it's a lot of times it just makes it a worse or like more difficult experience. Like, it just makes it more like clunkier even.
Yeah. I would take T-poses any day over I know what I'm supposed to do in this section, and the game is not letting me do it.
Did you get the bug when that one collectible that after you have to cross the like Uncharted like kind of chasm where you're up against the wall, it just turns you around and sends you back the other way? Did you run into that?
I did not run into that. I saw, when I was looking for the one that I ran into, I saw a lot of people like talking about that one, and I was like, whoo. Glad I dodged that bullet. I think it has been fixed in a patch since then. But yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I got that one, and that was like one of the worst ones that I ran into, and it's because I had to do that like 10 times. And I did look it up, and somebody's like, you got to jump to like the northwest of the like thing towards that. Like, there's literally you have to hit the exact pixel and like leap past where, and every other pixel will send you backwards, and you have to walk back and then turn around and walk back. And I did it like 10 times, and I thought it was going to hold me up from getting the platinum, because similar to your thing, reloading the checkpoints, quitting out and coming back, it doesn't do anything. It's just broken.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like that it is kind of that brings down the experience, I think, like a lot.
Yeah. And then there were like, I mean, the other aspect of it, like, it's not, I try and pull out like the platinum experience versus just like enjoying the game. But the in trying to get the platinum trophies, there are those like the trophies I still needed basically after the first run through of the game were all of the call to action trophies, which are basically, hey, you have to defeat a certain enemy with like a certain one of your team members' combo moves. And the problem is you don't get to choose like who does the combo move. It's just you get a prompt for triangle, and one of the team members will randomly do a thing that like takes out that enemy or something like that. And so I hadn't gotten any of those. So I basically had to go through and redo all those. And each of those, it was like, okay, this is like the one place in this game where you're going to fight these enemies. You've killed 2 of them and there's a third one. Go ahead and reload that checkpoint. So because if you kill that third one, boom, you're past it, and you have to restart the whole chapter again if you wanted to. And I was like, that's infuriating that like so much of that is left up to chance. But I finally got those ones all done, and like one of them was the last trophy that I shared as like the platinum. And then the collect and wear every costume, and like I was annoyed, especially by the end wear every costume, because I was like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I had put them all on at some point. And so when I got the last one, like I went to put it on and the trophy didn't pop. And I was like, oh, this better not be glitched. But I went through and like just wore every outfit. And what it was like, or at least what it seemed like to me was, I had probably in the like menu gone through and like added everyone, so you see it in that character screen, but you don't see it like on the full team screen. So what I did was like I went in, put it on, pop back out, so you see it in the full screen, and I just like did that for every one of the 45 outfits or whatever. But like, so those woes aside, getting the platinum, game was fun. I I didn't like the combat at first, but at some point it does that thing where kind of like it reaches a tipping point where like now you have enough abilities and your team members have enough abilities, and you start to know how to like utilize those abilities to like, partner with each other. I think especially there's an issue where like enemies will be weak to certain things that you don't have yet. And so like,
God, that's so annoying.
that works.
And then even on New Game Plus, you don't have the ability, and that broke my fucking brain.
Exactly.
Like, why then?
It's like, okay, you're giving me the flame icon. The flame is like the last like power up weapon I get in this game. Why are you giving me the flame icon on like chapter 3 of this game? Like I can't do anything with that. That doesn't help me at all. So yeah, that was like irksome as well of just being like that. Okay, so I can't do anything to like make the experience against this enemy better or easier. But when I face them again in 10 chapters, I'll be fine. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a little frustrating, irksome. I did appreciate going back through and just they do a great job of like setting things up that seem innocuous kind of the first time through that then like end up really paying off. So I had a lot of fun with that. The first time I played through, I didn't go to like when you're at Nowhere's, you can go, or when you're at Nowhere, you can go to the collector's thing. I didn't do that the first time around because it was like, hey, you need X number of credits to pay things off, and this is going to cost 5,000 credits. I was like, well, I'm not going to spend the money on that then. But the second time around, I'd like looked at a guide and saw like, oh, there's a way to get a free pass to the collector's place. Okay, I'll do that. And I went in there and enjoyed like all the fun little Easter eggs and like just teases of what's in there, as you would expect. And that was like the one thing I will say.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck not in there. Thor the Frog is though.
Cool.
Throg.
Throg, as well as like I think Thrognir or something like that. Whatever the Mjolnir version of Throg is.
It's just Mjolnir.
Okay. It had a different name that was like tied into a frog or something like that. But yeah, like, and I love that they had like the collector has like those two items in different like locations across the thing, so they can't like be connected or whatever. So yeah, like lots of fun little Easter eggs. Like I would go through anytime there was like, okay, you can go through the logs here and stuff. I was reading through those and getting and enjoying those, especially because the thing I really enjoyed about this is how much it just veers into the weirdness of the cosmic universe. Like all the enemies are fucking just weird monsters. All the planets are like fucking weird, like never before seen kind of things. It very much like tries to make every environment feel like something you've never seen before, compared to like, hey, weirdly, all of these planets in Doctor Who seem kind of Earth-like and almost like they're in quarries or something like that. Like every location in Guardians of the Galaxy felt like a alien hospitable planet kind of thing. All these enemies are very like there were a couple times where they kind of like poke fun at it. Like at one point walking through Nowhere, somebody makes a joke about how weird it is that like almost all sentient aliens are bipedal. And I was like, yeah, it is weird. Everybody humanoid in look and stuff.
I was about to say, it's like most sci-fi stuff. It's like, man, like alien planets look a lot like budget locations for entertainment industry, huh?
Yeah.
Vancouver, like, wow, how many superhero cities are basically Vancouver?
Mhm.
Weird.
Yeah. But yeah, so the design of the game was great. And then like, yeah, there's just a ton of stuff where I was like, I don't know any of these characters because they're going so far outside of where the MCU has kind of explored. But that was fun. There's one guy I still don't like after 2 playthroughs. I ended up doing the same thing to him both times, but he's locked in a jail at some point, and it's like you go to push a button thinking you might free him, and nope, it starts like taking him through processing of this like space jail, and then at some point later in the level he just gets jettisoned out into space, and you're just like, let's pretend we didn't see that, and it's like I have no idea who that guy was, or like it seems like a lot to like do for a literal throwaway gag, but I was here for it. It was fun.
That's super funny though, because I never tried to let him out because it was always like, I don't know what this dude's in for, and I was like, screw this dude, and I just walked away, and he's like, hey, and you just like leave him,
yeah,
he's like yelling after you,
no,
and I was like, that's so good.
If you push the button, like it'll like his cell basically descends into, like, this is not a spoiler or anything. It just kind of descends into the level. And he's like, wait, what do you do? What did you do? And you're just kind of like, I don't know, whatever. And then you go into like the next area that's like the processing, like that, the first thing we ever saw of Guardians of the Galaxy, of like them in front of the police kind of lineup thing. His cell like reappears there. Very briefly, and then like gets sent back away. And then as you're like escaping the station near the end, you'll get to like a window, and his cell will just be flying out into space, and you're just like, wait, was that? Let's pretend we didn't see that. And you just kind of continue. And like the first time they say that line, I was like focused on something else, so I missed it. I was like, wait, and so I like reloaded to save to see what they were talking about, and it was, sure enough, it was that guy being like sent out into space. It's just like, and then like you see reference to him later in like another thing where it's like, wait, wasn't that guy from the space jail? And it's just like, I wonder what his deal was, because he's definitely a character I don't know from the comics or anything. He looked like a space Winter Soldier basically, because he had like a face mask kind of thing. But like there are fun little gags like that I had a good time with. I really like what they do with Mantis in this one compared to the MCU, because this version of Mantis is more than just like super empathy. It's like she especially because she gets introduced in nowhere among like a whole bunch of phony fortune tellers. Like, she knows the future. Problem is, she knows millions of futures and has a hard time figuring out which one she's in. And so like you go through a whole sequence of the game with her kind of like tagging along and giving the commentary on that, of like, oh, that kills Rocket in like 30% of these things, so good job surviving, Fuzzy Beast, or whatever. Like, and so there's a lot of like humor mined from that. I mean, like, I think like you said when we first talked about it, like Drax is pretty much just the Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I thought they did a lot with him though, or at least like in a heartfelt way that I think I did all the optional conversations with him, and like you really get like a full fleshed out story, but like a friendship between him and Peter. Yeah. And like him opening up to Peter over time. And I'm just like, wow, that's wild,
Yeah, I will say like, and I've seen this comparison kind of made around, like, this game does a really good job with your crew and those optional conversations of feeling like a Mass Effect game. Of like, if you just play through the story beats, you'll get good character moments with all these characters. But if you find those, collectibles that you can then talk to people about back on the Milano and get this extra backstory and these extra kind of like conversational options, there's a lot of good stuff there. I really liked kind of learning more about Gamora, learning more about kind of like Rocket's own tragedy and stuff. But then even how Rocket and Groot meet in this universe was a fun kind of dip into like their history together. And then Drax, lots of good fun conversations about Drax. And then even kind of getting like Peter's backstory told in part through like flashbacks, and then in part through like his conversations with his crewmates. It's a very different story than the MCU version of things. And and I enjoyed it. Yeah. So yeah, like overall, I enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy. Fine, well, not like I would probably put it somewhere in the 7, maybe 7.5. Like I didn't think of it as a great game, but definitely in good category, good territory. Um, and I had enough fun with it to go through and like face off against some of those stupid trophies for the platinum on it. So yeah, that is Guardians of the Galaxy. Frank, let us throw it back over to you for Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart.
Yeah. So yeah, I finally got around to playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I guess to back up for a quick second too, just to let everybody know, like I do love the Ratchet and Clank games. I played all the ones on PS2. I missed most of the PS3 ones, and then I played the 2016 on PS4. So I've been waiting for this one, and I'm finally excited that it was like on sale, and I was able to dive in and grab it. So it's a great game though, and I think it's probably one of the best games that is just like a PS5 exclusive, which I'm sure most people would probably agree with. But it uses the PS5 in like such a smart way with like the way it uses the SSD, and you just like there's like no load times during the entire thing. Even when you're going from planet to planet, it's just you flying out of the atmosphere and then landing like into the next atmosphere in like a really cool like animation, and then even just like when you do some of the like the rift teleporting where you're just kind of going between worlds and going all over the place, like I think that's super cool and something you never really, like they said like, oh, this wouldn't have been possible before. So I feel like they have used that some of the new like next gen kind of features in some of the smartest ways that I've seen, which is definitely something I would expect from Insomniac. But I mean, I hold them in like a super high regard. But it's also just a fun game. Like it's, to me, that's like the funnest the funnest time I've had in a game so far. Like I played it 1.5 times almost because I had to go back through the new game plus a little bit, maybe like 1.25. But it's basically like I was down the whole time. Like I'm like, yeah, I'm having fun no matter what, especially because it's so fast to get to a planet, get to the other end of a planet, grab a gold bolt I need or an armor piece or whatever, and then get out of there. Like it's so fast to just do everything and you're having fun the whole time, and love upgrading the weapons. But that's something I've loved about the series since the beginning. So like that's really pretty much I think it, I guess.
Yeah, on the features, one of the other things I remember about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is they do like they're probably the best I've experienced so far of the adaptive triggers as well, because they build that into a lot of like the guns where it's like, hey, if you pull the trigger part way down, you're going to get this kind of firing. If you pull it all the way down, you're going to get this kind of fire or something like that.
I love that because it's like such a cool use. That's definitely a good like shout out, especially because the one that has like the shield gun is even cool, where you can kind of hold it halfway and it does like the shield, and when you go all the way, it fires out like a blast. Like, that is definitely, I think, something that's really smart, and that it would be cool to see like other games possibly use with like alt fires.
Yeah, it was one of those things. Like I remember, like that and Deathloop were the two. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be curious how this works, and like I really enjoyed it in that. Deathloop, I ended up feeling like it was maybe it got like toned down from how they had originally described it, or I just never used guns that jammed maybe in Deathloop, because they were like, if your gun jams, like the trigger will stop, like you won't be. And I was like, I did, like realizing it after the fact, I was like, oh, I don't think I ever really encountered that. Or maybe if I did, it was like only in the beginning until I started getting like the good guns, and then I was like keeping the good guns with me in every loop. So yeah, I never just had the shit guns that were gonna freak out on me and crap. So so I encountered the adaptive triggers much more in Ratchet and Clank, certainly when when you're trying to level up every single gun. What do you think of the story of the game?
I liked it. Like it's a bit basic of like the A and B kind of story, but that's kind of Ratchet and Clank. It's always like there's a bad guy doing bad stuff and you got to stop him. And then, but like the main kind of thing that has always been there is like it's about the characters, and I think they do that super well with adding in Rivet and Kit, which are both characters I really like. Like Jennifer Hale's Rivet is great, and if the series kind of going forward is her and Ratchet, like I'm totally cool with that. Like that's definitely, I think, a great combo and a good way to like spice it up, because like you get tired of it just being not only just Ratchet and Clank, which they're great, but then you have like Quark and like some of these other like side characters that you just are kind of like they're always here, and sometimes even like the side companions. But that's what I definitely enjoyed the story, and I'm interested to see where it would go if they keep like making, you know, more Ratchet and Clank games and kind of continuing the story forward. Because one of the things I like about it is that this is the most current, like in the Ratchet and Clank timeline. So it's cool to see everything from all the past games, even some of the ones I may have missed. Like I recognized all the robot pirates from like the PS3 games, and I'm like, oh, it's super cool that we get to see everything instead of it just being kind of this like 2016 remake that's kind of limited and doesn't have some of the things that they have like added over the years. So I'm excited where if they could go in making another one where they can kind of continue that story and then maybe even kind of continue the like going through different universes thing. You know, I guess multiverses are going to be huge going, you know, into the next generation.
Yeah.
Uh,
Indeed. Yeah, I really enjoy. I mean, without all of that like historical knowledge of Ratchet and Clank, having only played the 2016 version, there were parts of we talked about this the other day when we were recording that D Plus show. There were parts of Rift Apart where I was like, but wait, last time I saw Quark, he was a bad guy who was like in jail, and now he's just like your friend again or whatever. I was like, okay, I guess this is not a direct sequel to 2016. This is more of a continuation of Ratchet and Clank for like this generation of stuff. But I really enjoyed the addition of Rivet and Kit in this one. I think, especially like as the game kind of deals with their struggles while also dealing with this like, you know, this eternal struggle that Ratchet has had of kind of like being the last of his kind and whatnot, and like being able to hop into a multiverse and find another Lombax who's also kind of dealing with that last of her kindness. Was a fun like they work well together while also like it's weird because it's basically like Loki. They're also kind of the same. They're the same character, just like different manifestations of that character. So yeah, it's a weird. It is definitely going to be more into the multiverses. So shout out to Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse for kind of like breaking down that barrier for every other thing to start creating multiverses. Hooray! Because like even as I say multiverses now, I feel like I'm a shill for that WB game that's going to come out. I'm glad you enjoyed Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I think it'll be in the Game of the Year conversation for you.
Yeah. Like, I definitely think it's going to be my game of the year, but I definitely think it's going to be in like the top 5 for sure. Like, it was a super fun time, and like I said, I love those games, and I'm a little bit of a sucker for them. Like, they just always feel great and are always just like a fun time usually. Then the one thing that is just kind of like it's kind of like you were saying about Guardians. I try not to hold like the platinum experience against it, because then the platinum experience, there's like so many of the trophies are great, and you can get most of them just by playing the game, and like it's a great trophy list. And then there's 2 that are just total bullshit. Like one of them, you have to use a specific gun that's leveled up all the way to ricochet projectiles, and it has to kill the enemy with the projectiles. It can't be any other way, and like doing the thing that shoots the projectiles back also does damage. So if you kill them with that doesn't count. Like, it's total bullshit.
That's
and then
bull. That sucks.
Yeah, right. And especially
it's also
that's the only trophy that's like that.
And the trophy does not specify that's like, it does not go into that level of detail. That's just what the trophy hunters have figured out of like, well, here's why those kills that you thought were counting don't count and stuff. And so yeah, it's like it was a very obtuse bullshit trophy. And it like when Frank and I were talking about that the other day, it immediately I started like flashing back and being like, oh my God, I spent so much time trying to get that stupid trophy. So yeah.
Literally my playing the game was like 7 or 8 hours, 2 or 3 hours doing cleanup on other stuff, and then like 45 minutes on that one trophy, just farming the battle arena over and over again. And then it's extra annoying because the one you need in the battle arena to grind on, there's like 4 other rounds that don't even matter that you have to play through, and then you just start the whole thing over. And I was like, this is such a waste of my time.
Yep. What did you play around with one of my favorite elements of that game was like the love and care and Easter eggs that they put into it, including like the gold bolts that like, let you change, what kind of wrench you want Ratchet to be using, or even the thing I changed immediately when I collected the gold bolt for it was what the pickups were. So instead of nuts and bolts, I started picking up very early in my game the Overcharge from Sunset Overdrive cans. And I was like, I love that it's Insomniac. And because they own that IP, they can kind of include that stuff. But then you could also do like rupees or coins if you wanted to. And that was just like one example of like, hey, like, yep, you can completely kind of customize certain elements of this game and have fun with it. Obviously, like Ratchet and Clank both, or Ratchet and Rivet, both end up like wearing the same outfit kind of thing, but you can customize like the head, the chest, and the feet for those outfits, as well as their respective weapons and stuff. So did you have fun kind of playing around with like the customization stuff?
Yeah, it did a little bit with a lot of the stuff like changing the bolts or changing some of like the ratchet and stuff. I just kind of like left that as it always is. I did change Ratchet's his like wrench so that it's black and gold because I always like the cool black and gold style. And with Ratchet, I had him wearing the like Carbonox armor once I got like the full thing. I didn't put on the helmet, but so he's just wearing like Iron Man armor that's like black and orange. And then with Rivet, I never got the chest piece, but I had her wearing the like pirate pants. And I just never got the chest piece for that either. But I would have had her in like the pirate get up, which I kind of like that. Like I like that there's those little like extra things you can kind of find and collect that actually let you like change the world up a little bit. Though the funny thing was with the collecting the like nuts thing about it, I was like, I'm the purist. I need that. I can't rupees. And I was like, no, the coins. I was like, this isn't Mario. This isn't Zelda. I'm like, I want these bolts and I want to hear that sound effect, like that sound effect that they perfected 20 years ago. It's like when you smash up and you get like 1 billion of those things and you just hear the collection sound as you get them, it's so good. Like it's like that's ASMR really.
Man, that's fair enough. All right, very cool. So let's move on now to you, Cam. Tell us your updated thoughts on Tales of Arise.
So last time I talked to you about Tales of Arise, I talked about how it had a pretty unique, if like not like if it, like a shallow but very unique story that it was telling. It had some main characters that were fairly interesting. There seemed to be like a solid heft of mystery around it because your main character's amnesiac is amnesiac.
Yeah,
is amnesiac, and so because of that, lacks memories, and it's a big mystery. Like literally, the game starts off with him wearing like a full-on like metal mask, and his name is Iron Mask. That's what people call him. And as the game slowly evolves and more stuff is revealed, I finally got to a point where basically everything got laid out on the table. Quite literally in one scene, things were laid out on a table. It was
they brought the receipts.
Yeah, they brought the receipts. It was it. And so there was a big there was continuous reveals, and eventually, like all great stories with an amnesiac protagonist, identities were revealed. Like it pays off in a really good way, in a way that is like just solid. And like as you've been going through like the different areas, so each area so there are 2 twin planets, Dana and Rena. And 300 years ago, Rena in their spaceships came down and just took over Dana, enslaved the entire population, and reconverted the planet into basically like an energy projection or energy production, like just site. So there are 5 districts to Dana, each corresponding with the 5 astral elements, and essentially like destroyed Danan culture, destroyed like all the stuff, and so like legitimately you have a completely subjugated race of people who not only is their labor being exploited and taken, but they have these crystals embedded in their hands that literally, as they're being forced to work themselves to death, their literal life force is being converted into light astral energy and harvested that way too. So it's not just like, oh yeah, they're exploiting the planet. They're literally exploiting the lives and labor and just existence of the Danan people.
So it's an allegory for Amazon.
Yes, but it's just extremely brutal. It's extremely brutal. and you end up like there's some variety to it. But what's really great about them doing it and separating the world like this is each area is drastically different than all the others, and they're like, it can be. We don't need to make it make sense because they're using magic and science and bullshit to basically turn an entire area into something that just collects one single element. And it's based all around that. So there's an area that literally it is harvesting all the light. And so you're there and it's perpetual night. Because any source of light, as far as like the astral energy of it, is being sucked in. And it's the same thing with everywhere else you go. You get to the Earth place, and there are these wildly looking, like, just Earth formations. They're just wildly creative and cool looking, but they only exist because the astral energy being harvested is the Earth's astral energy. But that's also where you find out that so each district is ruled by a ruler, and each ruler has basically the autonomy to do whatever they want, to harness as much astral energy as possible for what's called a crown contest, to determine who will be the sovereign and ruler of the Renan people. Basically, you are chosen as a candidate, you get sent to Dana to rule your district, and then eventually time comes, whoever basically amass the most astral energy from their district is chosen as the ruler. Each area is, and so there's different kind of interpretations. The first area you're in, brutal dictatorship, just constantly keeping people down, and that's one way of ruling over others. The second area you go to, it is basically the ruler there has gotten everybody to spy on each other. There's an entire secret police made up of Danans who report on other Danans. It's a whole thing. It's done in a really great way to basically keep people from unifying and being able to trust each other. And it creates a very unique cultural issue in that area. And it's spread throughout the entire game. The different ways that people are oppressed and how that works. And this game does a lot to touch on. Like I said, this is very shallow. It's a shallow story. It touches on a lot of really cool things, but it's all very surface level. It's all very thematic. It never really delves super deep into anything. But in doing so, at the same time, it doesn't start being too big for its own britches. It doesn't get to a level of being preachy. It's just, the main character, Alphen, who is, Iron Mask. Sorry, slight spoiler on that one. Although if you look at the back of the case, it has his name there anyway.
I was going to say, last time we talked about this, I was on the website, looking at it, and his name's right there on the website. And you were like, oh, I didn't want to say anything. And I'm like, clearly not a spoiler to them.
Yeah, no. I mean, it happens. You get that reveal in the first, 2 hours. But yeah, basically, it's this exploration of, okay, well, what is the secret of the Iron Mask? What is the purpose behind it? What is the secret that is behind Alphen's identity? That comes to light, everything. And it's done in a really, really cool way. It's a really cool sci-fi adventure RPG story that I really liked. But I got to a point where essentially the story came to a very good point that was basically oh cool, we're here at the final part. And then it introduces a new element to the game where it's wait a minute, what? And it feels like an artificial extension of the game. I've looked into it. I only have maybe 2 to 4 more hours of the game to play. But I honestly don't really care at this point because the biggest reason why I've been enjoying the game is because of the evolution of relationships. Basically, you have a party made up of a mix of Renan and Danans and how they interact with each other and how they're different. You get a actually that's a spoiler. I won't go into that, but there's so much about this about the exchanges being made because these are people from vastly different walks of life, uniting for a single cause. And so it's not a typical RPG party where it's you joined and then oh, we have maybe one event quest and then that's your backstory, but now we're all family. It's great. You have one character who is just openly antagonistic to the others because they're Renans and she's Danon, and she is like just like not like she's made it very clear she does not forgive or forget. This is a like we all have the same goal, so we're a party together, but like do not mistake that for friendship. And watching the evolution of her character over time go from being like, I'm getting real, like as a player, I'm getting real sick and tired of your bullshit of just like coming down on everybody. Like, well, that's just because you're a Renan, like you're a Renan and all you do is exploit Danons. It's like, we get it. We get it. We've been seeing this in the entire game. You know that these like, and eventually like the comeuppance on that pays off extremely well. And so like these character, like people making bonds with each other and growing together as a group feels really like nice and natural versus arbitrary, like the way that a lot of like RPG parties are thrown together. And like, that's the way that works. Like it's done in a really good way. But the reason why I'm not wanting to play any more of it is because arbitrarily something happened and now, like the relationship between the two leads, Xion and Alphen, has like gotten into like a really weird place, and it's not natural. It's not like it was done to prolong a drama, like a dramatic element that has been settled. Like the big emotional payoff of the relationship between these two people happened. And now you're arbitrarily saying, no, it didn't, so you can keep it going. And it's completely unnecessary. And makes for awkward situations in the game that don't make any sense. Like, it's just nonsensical at this point. And that really annoys me. Like, that's like really broken like my interest in the relationships, because for arbitrarily dumb plot reasons that don't need to be happening, like there was an epic, awesome fight that I just had, a boss fight that was awesome and could be the boss fight that's the end of the game. Like, it's that good. Now, there's still some more mysteries to the world, and there's still some more, like, things left over hanging fruit for plot stuff that can still be answered. But the drive of the story hasn't really been uncovering the world, like what's going on in the world. It's been about watching especially these two main characters who really started off with the only thing they had in common is that they wanted to, they both had an interest in ending the crown contest. One, like they had their own reasons for it. And to see that relationship get like weirdly shifted just for the purpose of causing drama, and like just it's super not natural and just doesn't make sense, is super disheartening. And I don't care for it. And honestly, I don't care for playing, anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6 more hours of a story that honestly already feels like it's ended. So, like, where does that leave me with like my, like, I'll be honest, like Tales of Arise is definitely going to be in my top 10 games of the year. Gameplay alone, like fighting alone in that game is top notch awesome. Like Tales, once again, blowing it out of the water with their combat mechanics, blending together real-time RPG elements in a way that like nobody else does. Like nobody does it this way. Nobody does it as good. Like once again, that's carrying me over. Interesting characters that seem generic on their front end, and honestly, like I said, shallow. Like we don't get too much depth into these characters, but it's not. There's nothing worse than the game telling you, oh, this is a really deep thing. This is like a really deep, like intense, important thing, and just have it be generic and boring as all shit. And Tales doesn't do that. And that's done in a great way. I really like it a lot. Tales of Arise is definitely going to be my top 10 of the year. I don't know if it's my favorite Tales game yet. Well, actually, I can say it's not my favorite Tales game. I still think Berseria, as far as like a story goes, is still better. But yeah, it's good. Let me rephrase that. It's a great game. As far as the game goes, it's great. I'm just like, I don't think I'm going to go back, especially because like here, let me rephrase that. I will probably go back and finish the game, but not by the end of the year.
How much time have you put into the game so far versus that like 4-ish hours that are left?
I'm probably a good 45 to 50 hours into the game.
Okay. That's unfortunate that like you get 90% of the way through the game potentially, and then they do something that like irks you to the point where it's like, yeah, I don't care about seeing this through.
Well, I mean, the thing is if like I keep getting forced into cutscenes where this stuff is emphasized, and if that wasn't the case, if they were just like, hey, the relationships are where they're at like before this moment, and it's just like going forward, like we're going to support each other and care about each other, and like that's going to be the consistent thing going forward. Because now it's just like this awkward, like Alphen's just like Xion, like that, like did this, and this, and Xion's just like got like walls up in front of her that aren't like there was an entire section of like breaking down the walls between Xion and the other members of the party. That was like really cool and epic and awesome. That led up to a really awesome and epic dungeon that leads up to an even more cool, awesome fight at the end of the dungeon with the boss and the lord of that area. That like is an emotional, like emotional fulfillment of these characters in this party and the story of the world itself. That honestly, that could have been the end of the game, and it would have been cool and awesome and fun. And then maybe like have like one more thing where it's like, okay, now you have to deal with the ramifications of like breaking the crown contest, or like, you know, what happens at the end of that. Like you have to deal with the ramifications of all of this, and that'd be fine too. Like that's basically where we're at, but you're arbitrarily like putting fake fractures in a relationship that has just healed and like really come to a fulfillment and like a good, maybe not even a conclusion, but like where they were at that point was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've just kind of like thrown a wrench in it for the purpose of elongating and like bringing back elements of stuff that was already resolved. It's just, it's a bad storytelling mechanic.
Yeah.
And like, I probably will finish it just cause like, I want to see like, you know, you're like, there's a lot of cool stuff still that I want to kind of explore through and go through. But at the same time, we're 2 days away from the end of November. I still have like 3 more games I have to play for a game of the year. Like, cool. I can tell you the last fight I was in, the last boss fight, easily puts it up at like in a top 10 situation. Not to mention the level of depths of mechanics and combat of this game, and like the availability and simplicity of how it's exposed to you and how you get better at the game as it goes on. Top notch.
Mm-hmm. It's the way you kind of have described it. It's like your frustration with the storytelling choices at this point are only going to hurt the game in Game of the Year conversations rather than like help it.
Yeah.
So better to walk away from it while it's ahead, as opposed to like finish it out and see it dip a couple spots because of it or something.
Exactly that. Yeah. I like, gosh, yeah, no, there's some really awesome and amazing stuff that, happens towards the end of that. That is just like the revelations of who Alphen is, his correlation to like his relation to the crown contest itself is done in such a cool, unique and way that I never saw coming. Like I could not have predicted what the answers were for it. And that's awesome. Like in my mind, I had a couple ideas, like a couple theories, but what they actually do with it is really great. Love it. Cause it's just out of left field and you're like, wait, what? No way. And then that is a partial revelation to something later on as well with the boss. And it's great. It all comes full circle in such an amazing way that, now it's like it's handicapping itself with this end game stuff. So.
All right. Well, let us circle around to our next game, catching up for Game of the Year stuff. Loop Hero. I hopped into this. I don't know if either of you've played Loop Hero. I imagine you haven't.
I haven't.
Cam, did you check out Loop Hero at all?
I've checked it out a lot by watching like streams and whatnot, but I have
Gotcha.
not actually played it myself.
Yeah, so I remember it would have been like back in March when the game came out. Like it was all the buzz for a little bit. That was like one of those games like Forsaken or something. Like everybody was talking about Loop Hero for, a few weeks of time or something, and then the next thing came out. It was in that like early part of the year where people were starved for like a new thing to get behind. And I remember picking it up at the time thinking, "Oh, I'll hop in and do like a let's play of it." And then I just never did. Like other like whatever else I was playing at the time just kind of kept taking up my time. Um but I was like, "All right, I'm nearing the end of the year now. Let me like go back through the catalog of like games in my like games to play in 2021 list that I have it in the GG app." And I was like, "Loop Hero. Let me hop back in and check that one out." And So I like recorded basically like my intro to it for a let's play this last week, and I got hooked to kind of the loop of it. It's a roguelike, which typically doesn't grab me, but it's a fun enough twist on the roguelike in that you're not like it's a roguelike where you're kind of like the god character, kind of like setting up the randomness of the world for this hero to go through their loop. You can equip the hero with the armor, and you can kind of like set up their path and how easy or how hard is this going to be for them, kind of thing. But you get more rewards if you get put more shit for them to overcome. And it's fun. I haven't gone back to it in the last couple of days with Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff, but I beat like the first two bosses. Basically, like the game is split between like expedition mode, where you've got kind of the hero going through the loop, fighting enemies, and like you're rebuilding the world, and then you go back to camp, where you can kind of take all the resources that you collected, and like help restore the world and people's memories and stuff like that. And then you go back out into expedition, and the world has reset, and basically like it starts over again. And it's just kind of like going back and forth a little bit, like going into the underworld in Hades versus like in the House of Hades. So it's that kind of mechanic. I having beat the first two bosses, I feel like it's very slow going at this point for me to be like prepared and ready to defeat the next big thing. So I don't know how much more time I'm going to put into it. I don't feel like I'm progressing a lot at this point. Like I've built a lot of like the early level things, and then like the next things to build, I need like 20 of something, and I have 2. And it's like I don't know if I have the time or interest in trying to go and like farm another 20 of those things or whatever. But like it's definitely a fun twist on the roguelike formula. And it can be real fun, just like being like, all right, I've set up, this little corridor of the loop is where it's the little forest path, so I know the enemies that they're going to face in that path. There's so the way you kind of build out the world is it's like also part deck builder game. So you'll like, before you go into a loop, you can like assign what cards you're going to be able to find in this loop. And when you defeat enemies, you either get like cards or you get gear for your hero that you can kind of equip. And the cards are going to be like, you're limited to like, right now I think I have a deck of like 24 total cards that I can pick from, but you can only choose like 14 overall or something like that. So it's a matter of like, okay, I'm going to leave these ones off the board, and I'm going to take these ones with me. And so like I can go out there and build, mountains that will add to like the defense of the character or something like that, or build meadows that will like each day in the loop, your hero will like restore health, and you restore like +2 or 3 points of health every day for each meadow tile that you have on the map. And then there's like the tiles on the loop itself where it's like, okay, I've got like, these are like my grove tiles, and in a grove tile, such and such an enemy respawns every 2 days or something like that. And they'll just kind of keep stacking so that the next time you go around that spot, boom, there's like 3 enemies that you need to take out because 3 days have passed or whatever it is. But then you can kind of like build, like you can be strategic in like, oh, I know that if I get a grove tile, I can also use this bloody grove tile, and like the perk of the bloody grove is vines will attack and basically auto kill any enemy that gets down below 15% health. So like if you can get an enemy down to that, like you kill it at that point. And so it basically is like that is a very powerful thing if you get it in like very heavily populated areas, and it'll like affect, you know, the 9 squares around, or the 8 squares around it in a grid kind of thing. And so like when I realized, also like like once you've placed and defeated enough enemies in an area, like a boss will spawn back at like your home camp. And so you basically have to defeat them to like clear out the level and stuff. And so the first boss was beating the crap out of me. I was getting nowhere near killing him. And then I realized, oh, I've got this power up. If I can get him down to 15% health, that like map piece will do the rest of the job. And that's how I ended up beating him the first time, was like kind of using that exploit in a strategic way. And like that felt incredibly rewarding and cathartic and stuff. And then at that point, you've defeated the guy. You can continue going through the loop, because every time through the loop, like the enemies on the map are going to get a little harder, but the rewards also get a little better. Problem is, if you die mid loop, you lose a whole bunch of the resources you've collected. And you can only like retreat with like full resources when you're back at your like camp space, like to start the loop. So it's, you know, risk reward, typical stuff like that. And so there have been times where I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to make this loop about, you know, doing 5 runs through the loop and getting like as many resources as I can before it gets to the point where I'm going to start getting like overwhelmed by the enemies. And so, yeah, it like the loop of it definitely has grabbed me, but I've also reached the point where I'm like, I don't know if I'm progressing enough to where it's rewarding to keep hopping in and you know, checking it out. It's been it replaced Fortnite for a few days there as like the game I hop in and do a loop, like while I'm on a break from work or like on my lunch break or something like that. I'll do a loop I'll do an expedition in Loop Hero instead of hopping into a game of Fortnite or something like that. So it's been fun. I mean, it's another one. It'll be somewhere in my conversation for the game of the year. I don't know if it'll crack up to the top 10, and I don't know if I'll put enough time into it to like finish. I think based on like the bestiary and stuff, I think there's like 6 bosses and I've beaten 2 of them. So I don't know if I'll keep going until the end. But it's also fun. Like there's also fun little banter bits where like when you reintroduce a monster into the world for the first time, your character, because the whole, sorry, I guess I should have rolled this back. The whole setup, the premise of the game is like an evil force has like destroyed most of the world, but somehow your hero is left behind, and your hero can like rebuild the world by going through this loop and adding these cards and stuff. And once you've rebuilt something, like it's like the memory of that thing returning to the world. And so like you'll encounter an enemy for the first time and you'll have like a bit of back and forth banter, like the first time you encounter vampires, and you don't know if vampires innately good or bad until it starts fighting you, and it's like, oh, okay, you're a bad guy. Or like, you know, bandits come into the world, and it's like, well, if I want to restore the world, I do have to restore, you know, the good and bad of the world. So I guess bandits, you know, have to come back as well. They're doing their part in this ecosystem kind of thing. And so there's like fun little like mini cutscenes, kind of not even cutscenes, just like conversation dialogue pop-ups between characters when they come back into the world when you've restored them for the first time. That's been a little fun. And then back at your camp, kind of every, you know, new building, you like when you build the smithy, you have like a new blacksmith character that you can talk to and you'll have some conversations with. And so, yeah, it's a fun little game. I get kind of like why people were like enamored with it, and, you know, why it was the crazy hotness for a few weeks there back in March. But I also see why it faded from conversation since then, as like it is a thing that's really cool in that moment, but then you kind of hit that roguelite like wall where it's like, okay, now I've reached the point, do I really try and keep pushing through this, or do I say I've seen what this game has, I'm good and I can bounce off? And that's kind of the fork in the road I'm at right now myself. So those are my Loop Hero thoughts. Let us swing it back over to you, Frank, for some Yakuza talk.
Yeah. So I'm still I'm waiting for Deathloop in the mail. So went back and was playing Yakuza 0. I have a lot of thoughts on that, or I wanted to bring up, but then I also just kind of wanted to say some things about the general Yakuza series. Since this year I've gotten into that, and like the beginning of this year I played Kiwami 1 and 2, and then I played 3, 4, and then I played 5 at like the end of summer. And so they're kind of taking a couple breaks in between here and there because they're very dense games. And especially like I keep getting roped into doing the side stuff. And even this time I was like, I'm not going to do the side stuff. And they got me. I've been doing all the side. I've extended my playthrough by 12 hours because of real estate and cabaret clubs.
Exactly. Like the cabaret club stuff for Yakuza. Because I kicked off the year playing Kiwami 1 and 2 and then 0. And then I was like, screw it. I'm not going to play through 3 through 6. I'm just going to hop into Like a Dragon. But the cabaret club stuff in 0, I think it was in 0. It might have,
it's in 0 and 2.
Yeah. I guess it would have been. I got introduced to it in 2.
Same.
But then
I liked it a little bit better there.
In Yakuza Kiwami 2 kind of thing, and because it was Kiwami 2, it was like refined a little bit from the Yakuza 0. But like, I definitely was a sucker for that for the cabaret club, and then the real estate stuff especially. I was like, yep, because that got introduced in 0, or at least of those 3 that I played, and I was like, yep, this scratches like this sim mini game management kind of thing for me, and had a great time with it.
Yeah, it totally hit the like businessman in me, and I loved it, and it felt so great. And even though it's like such a basic mini game, but then like even like last night I was playing it, and I have all the properties you can get, even the ones you get through like friendship, and they're all mostly S rank I finished the storyline, and I'm still just getting money, and like I have I'm trying to get all the properties to S rank, which you get like nothing for. But the one of the businesses in like the later areas, it takes a ton of money to upgrade in the businesses in the later areas, and one of the businesses makes like 1,000,000 yen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, but it starts off at like 600,000, but even maxed out, it only makes like 1.2 million. And I'm like, do you realize it cost me 100,000,000 yen to upgrade this play? I'm never going to get that money back. Like, I'm over here doing like real businessman things. And the game is just like, no, this is a grindy mini game. Just spend your money, dude. Like, and I'm like, I'm trying to like haggle with the mini game. Like, no. I want to get the cheap advisor in here. I'm never going to get that income out of this establishment. But it's like but the thing that got me about that is because it's like passive, because they have to do the money collections in the background. So I have it upgraded all the way, so it's the fastest it can possibly be. It still takes like 2-3 minutes or something like that. So I have enough time to just leave and then go do something and then come back. So I've just been doing like side missions and mini games and friendships and whatever. And that's why I've just been doing all the side stuff. But that's what I always get roped into the side stuff, whether it's fun or not. Like sometimes it's really fun and sometimes it's just awful. And I always end up getting roped into it. Because they do such a good job of like entwining everything together though. And this isn't all the games of like, you can do the main mission and just mainline through it and you'll get a great story. But if you stop and do side stuff, like you get additional just like jokes and funny scenes, but you also get like abilities and money and equipment. And like if you do the training, you'll get great abilities. And like there's all these things that everything's always like feeding back into each other. And even when you go to like the arcade and you just play Outrun, then you'll become friends with the arcade woman. And then if you play enough times, you become friends and she gives you the arcade for your like business. Like, and it's like everything is just like feeding into each other, even though there's like 70 different things happening at all times. And it's so easy to just get lost in for like hours and hours and hours. And that's in all the games. And the thing that some of the things I wanted to shout out about all the games in general is like, I think they all have really good stories that are all really well written and really well acted. They also, the thing I'm impressed about is the way they're able to, it feels like such a real world. All these characters feel like super real and super well developed. And then it feels so real because like somebody who shows up in Yakuza 1 and you don't see again will show up in like Yakuza 3 and they matter more. And then like the guy that owns the ramen shop shows up in like 5 of the Yakuza games and you're just friends with this guy. And I'm just like, but I love that. Like I love some of these like just side dumb relationships and these like there's like a a weird couple that like the woman's just kind of scamming the dude, and they show up in like 3 or 4 different Yakuza games, and it just became a really funny running bit where every time they showed up, and it kept going, and I'm like, these people again. And then I got into it at some point. Like now I'm invested in their little love story, and like that's what is great about it. But I love that the way that they're able to just continually introduce new characters, but then make me actually care about them. Like by the time you play 7 of these games, there's literally like 100+ people that have come through in and out and have all have their backstories and their reasons for why they're doing their thing. But they always make me like care, and they always make me be like, wow, this person. And even if I start out hating the person, I'll be like, wow, okay, this is why this person's doing this, or this person actually has a super deep story that actually goes back to like a different Yakuza game. Like they do like retconning, but in like a good way, where they're not going back and saying like, hey, this didn't happen. They're going, hey, this is information you didn't have. And they like add more things into things you already experienced. And like one of the storytelling mechanics I think that's really cool about Yakuza 2 is they show you the same scene that's like a flashback, but they show you it like 8 different times from like 8 different people's perspectives. And each time you get more information about like new things that happened that night. And the whole game is based off of like a night that happened like in the past. And that's like that's not really spoilery. That's just kind of the setup for the game. But it's like, that's such a cool storytelling mechanic and a way to deliver information. And that's what they have in like all these games. It's like they're always doing really cool, interesting things, and they always have me. I care like the whole time. I've never been like, I sometimes in some of the side stuff I lose interest and start fast forwarding a bit, but always in the mainline stuff, I'm always 100% invested in all the people and what they're doing. And I don't want to spoil it, but one of the things I love too is there's a guy that's like a minor villain in one of the games, and then in the next game he gets an entire redemption. And I was like, they made me care about this dude that sucked. I hated him. I thought I was like, get him the hell out of here. And they made me be like, wow, he redeemed himself. And like, you could still hate him, which I kind of do. But it's like, I didn't think he would ever come back, let alone they would be like, hey, let's spend time with this guy and let's talk to him and hear from him and how his experience with Kiryu actually changed him as like a person. And I was like, wow, this is actually like wild. And there's just a lot I love, but that's what I kind of go back to about like they just keep pulling things from other games, even if it's not like a huge gigantic story beat that like necessarily matters. But they always like, if you're playing all the games and like paying attention, there's so much there for you. Mm-hmm. One thing I did want to tell you guys is it's not a huge spoiler. It's just a thing that you do in one of the games, but it's you end up wrestling at some point in like an actual wrestling match. But the thing I loved about it, and this goes into like they have so much care and attention to detail for all these small things, is like it's not, when you get into the match, it's not just about beating the other guy and taking down his health. You have to put on a good match. So like it's kind of like in Tony Hawk when the guy tells you what tricks to do. It's like people in the crowd are cheering like what you need to do, and you have to do those moves on the opponent. And then at one point, I'm just working this dude over. And then at one point they start cheering for him. So then I'm like, oh, well, now I need to set up so that he can like flip me on the ground. And like, it was so, but that's wrestling. It's about like the show, us working together to put on this incredible show. And that's when I was like, man, that's such a cool little like moment that doesn't really like mean a ton for like the entire series, even in like a story thing. It's like really early and they're just kind of doing it. But then it's like, I just loved like, man, that's such an attention to detail and a love for wrestling there. And when you play baseball, there's such an attention and love and detail to baseball and pool and darts and like all these little things. And when you go to the bar and you order whiskey, this guy will just tell you a paragraph about whiskey, and it reminds me of like the bartender in Catherine. And I was like, man, like it's just like they have so much love and attention to detail for literally everything. And that's just something I love about it. Even, the pocket circuit, which kind of sucks because there's like weird RNG and shit there. But like,
oh yeah, no, the pocket circuit sucks balls. Well, and I love it. Like I love it. So I love it. I hate it. Like it sucks, but I love it.
In defense of pocket circuit, when you're talking about like the recurring characters that kind of pop up throughout, I was like, oh yeah, I immediately was like, that pocket circuit guy. I love that pocket circuit guy.
Pocket circuit fighter.
Yeah, pocket circuit fighter.
And then you have to like in Yakuza Kiwami, you have to find a successor.
Yeah. Like that's like his arc over the over the games is fun.
That reminded me though of like about these characters. The one that came to mind for me was in Kiwami, the judo guy.
Yeah,
you meet, and it's just like he's just a judo guy. He goes like, yeah, oh, I got involved. Like let me treat you to some food, and you go to all the different food places and get drinks and whatnot, and then you end up fighting him in an arena where he just uses judo skills.
Yeah.
And then you beat his ass because don't fuck with the Dragon of Dojima, bitch.
In that same vein, and kind of bouncing off your wrestling stuff, Frank, I love that like New Japan wrestlers will just show up in the cage matches, or they'll be like, you know, guys that you can basically, you know, get for your construction crew in that mini game, or like they continue to come back, like Tetsuya Naito and stuff like that. Like I'm like, wait a minute, I recognize that name, and or like Okada and stuff. It's like they just have New Japan pro wrestlers in here that Kiryu faces off against or something like that. And it's just like it's fun seeing those elements kind of like cross over into this world in all of their absurdity. And just like the world itself. Like, I mean, obviously like it being a Sega franchise and seeing the Sega arcade change game to game, and the different games, especially when you go back into the 80s and you're playing it in Yakuza 0. It's like, okay, now you're playing the really rough early Sega stuff.
Because that's when they're like, hey, you have to play Outrun for 10% of this guy's company. And I was like, I suck at Outrun. That's like totally unrelated to Yakuza. I'm so bad at Outrun.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
And I didn't win, and I let it go. I was like, he can have 10% of my company. Fuck him. I'll get it back.
Nice.
I will say, for me, I love going around and like to the different Crane games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Crane games and getting all the collectibles, and they're all little Sega franchise collectibles, and it's awesome.
Yep.
Love it.
I
just I collect all of them.
Not Ape Escape.
Ape Escape, but no, Super Monkey Ball.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, Super Monkey Ball. I love getting all of them, and then just like my storage inventory is just filled with these plushies, and it's like I tried giving one to a girl for like on a date, and she's like, "Okay," I'm like, "Crap."
Yeah,
they only want the expensive like LaMarche, like Italian.
Yeah, exactly. Like they want
like
the diamonds, the diamond bracelets and stuff like
that.
Well,
some do. That's also like the intricacy of like the hosting dating situation in Kiwami is the only one I've really gotten deep into with it.
It's in every game, and it's always different and unique, and they spend so much time on it.
They spend so much time on it, and like these are real characters who have like real issues, and like like the one girl who I was like pursuing for a while was just like really, it was like what I liked about one of them was it was like establishing really more of a friendship than a relationship. Which I liked. And then the other one was not so much it was an adult, not necessarily friendship, but not a deeply romantic relationship, a very cordial and professional, personal relationship. If that makes any sense, like it's only in Japan can you have that, but her issue being my sister wants plastic surgery, and my parents are against it, and like. What are your thoughts on that? And it's like, but also like trying to be obfuscate that you've been to prison, and like the intricacies of that, and versus the other one being like way more of an open book, and actually she's like, yeah, I'm actually not even interested in guys, I only like girls, and you're like, oh, cool, we can have like just a cool friendship then, as like you do the hosting thing, and it's fun. It's like, oh wow, that's like I totally expected it to be more of like to be far more lecherous. If that makes any sense.
To that, Yakuza has that to offer too. Specifically, I'm thinking like in Kiwami 2, like the photograph mini game or whatever, like the photographer mini game.
Oh,
where
God,
it's
that's
like
so weird.
It's like live action girls, and you just kind of like say
that you get those video options in Kiwami 1, and it's just like no.
It's uncomfortable. I played through them and I got the trophy for a couple of those, but it's like it was more just out of curiosity to see like how deep down this rabbit hole do they go? Because
they go
it's like
all the way down.
It's like, you know, you get a sexier costume kind of each time you level up, and it's just like this is what is
I didn't want the sexier costume. I don't want sexier costumes. I just want it's crazy that it's like yeah.
I was gonna say like the hostess and the cabaret stuff, like where you're actually having conversations and these are actual characters that you're like meeting, interacting with. That's great. Versus like this incredibly weird, perverse objectification of these like in reality actresses who got hired for a gig by Sega to like coyly dance and stuff like that. It's just, oh man, it's weird and uncomfortable.
And it's all in the same game. Like it's like it's so weird. It's so like honestly, I don't think there's another series like Yakuza out there that is like that caters the like that says, oh, there's a line. Cool. I'm just gonna dance around it. I'm gonna be on this side, and now I'm gonna be on this side. Am I toeing the line? Am I just completely off? Like it moves around so much on like what is like oh, like this cabaret dating stuff. You know, these are actual characters that have like actual problems, and like they have to deal with them themselves. But you can be there to help and support them, and you build up these relationships with them, and it's really cool and awesome. And then because like one thing I got, the gal whose sister wants plastic surgery, I got her like a very expensive, I got it, I didn't pay for it. I got it as a reward for something. And I just happened to have it on me. So I was like, oh, here, let me give you this. And she got angry because she goes, this is really expensive. You should not be giving me such expensive things. Like, I'm like, I like that because it was a moment where it could have been like a cheap, oh, thank you, 5 stars, yay, you gave me this present and now my affection goes up. No, it going down. It was like, I think less of, like, do you think so low of me that I would just take this very expensive gift from you? Like, what is, like, I've told you about other guys who do this. I don't like it. And it's like, dang, I was not expecting that. That was such a cool moment. And then on the flip side of that, not too much longer after, I get a video cutscene of the actress doing some like some stuff, and it's just like, what is this game? Yeah, it's weird. Like you told me I should not objectify and get like just lather gifts onto a person. Yeah, and then you objectify the actress playing her. Because going to the the other example you gave of like she's into girls, cool. So this is just gonna be a friendship thing. But if you like play that out to the end of that arc or whatever, that actress. Like that character still does a sexy thing for you, and it's like what yeah, what yeah. Just like the delivery of like that like lecherous like pervy shit is like weird, but at the same time just fits within the game too. Yeah, because it's like this is like this like there's a porn
in multiple games. Yeah, exactly. You can go into video like VHS porn shops and just like you're gonna go into a back room and like watch a video, or you go into like you work like a phone sex line kind of thing. It's like Yakuza games are weird.
Sometimes the porn
they throw
store
everything at the wall, stealer. And yeah, some of this stuff might stick in our minds, but it did take us a good 15 minutes before we looped around to this weird shit. We talked about all the other stuff we liked first. So
the porn shop in Kiwami 1, at least in like the main area, like you don't pick up anything. Kiryu asks for some very specific stuff and they don't have it, and it's like, dang, Kiryu, like you massive perv ball. Like you have of course the Dragon of Dojima has enough courage to ask for these things to a living human breathing human being. But like you can also like look at like the covers of like what is actual like adult videos in like from Japan in that era. Apparently, like I was like, this is weird, and I'm like, I can only assume that like these were popular porn videos at the time of like where Yakuza Kiwami takes place in like history. Yeah, like that era, like.
But then they'll also throw you a curveball and like you'll go to watch a video in there and it turns into a side quest that's basically The Ring. It's like, all right, sure, thanks Yakuza, let's go nuts.
This is so weird, man. It's amazing how like absolutely batshit wild that series is. Because it's everything. It's not like, oh well, what's weird about it? You don't understand. There's not one weird thing about Yakuza games. Everything's weird.
Yeah.
And it knows it, and it plays into it, and it's just the weirdest stuff, but it's also the funniest and like heartfelt. But at the same time, it's like, cool, this dumb, stupid thing that I just did, and now I'm gonna go into a tattoo shop where I get my tattoo like done up a bit, and it's actually gonna be this like very emotional moment where the tattoo artist talks about like the differences of the tattoos that you and your best friend got when you guys were younger, and like basically like he is the one that gives you the explanation of like your friend has changed. It's not just like this thing. It's like he has changed. He's gone from being the koi fish to a dragon himself, and it's like that's such an emotional. You get on the phone with him, and it's like it's such an intensely emotional scene, and then afterwards, I get into a fight with a bunch of dudes who are trying to like scam me.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, you broke my glasses. That's like 1 billion yen. No,
Yeah.
fight me then. And then you beat up all 5 guys, and they're like, oh, it was like, oh no, it's that guy that already beat us up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my gosh, this game.
Yeah. I'm glad, Frank, that both of us got into this series this year. I applaud you for getting so deep in it with how many games you played. Like for me, 1, 2, and 0. And then, like, it was enough for me to hop over into Like a Dragon. But I definitely want to continue with the series. This seems like now kind of my new, like, January, February series, you know, in that, like, slow period of time for kind of new releases and stuff. Like, and I have them all. Like, I picked them all up on sale at some point, you know. So, like...
They're all on Game Pass.
That's right.
Yeah,
They're all on Game
true.
Pass now, too, yeah. So yeah, and apart from Like a Dragon, I'm never gonna platinum any of those other games. So,
God, no,
so I don't care about trophies really on them. But
I fought tooth and nail just to get to like 75 to 80% on like most of them, and the rest I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah,
you have to do everything, which means you have to eat all the food at every restaurant.
Exactly,
you have to do all the music. You have to do everything.
I do the food at restaurants a thing anyway. Every time I go to a restaurant, I order something different.
Yeah.
And I like that they went all out for like restaurants and like menus and like it's so good, man. Yeah. It's so good.
In one of the Yakuzas, it's like Yakuza 3, some of the food is, instead of being animated, like it was always beautifully animated, it's like photographs. And I'm like, oh, you guys are just having a great time going out drinking, like getting beers, getting great food, taking photos, and then uploading them into your game. Like I was like, y'all are having a great time.
Yep. It's definitely a fun series, and I'm excited to maybe hop back into it in like, you know, January, February to hop into 3 and 4 and see how far into it I can get next time. Are you gonna hop into any of the Judgment games?
Yeah. Basically, my plan now is to finish 0, and then I have to play 6, and then I don't know if I'll go into Like a Dragon or the Judgment games, but I do want to play those. Especially because, like, going forward, the mainline Yakuzas are supposed to be, like, more of the JRPG, kind of like a Dragon, and then Judgment's going to be where kind of the fighting beat-em-up stuff is at.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that combat a lot, so I don't want to, like, lose that. So I definitely am happy that they're at least going to do that in, like, some capacity in, like, a side game.
Yeah, I like the action combat in like some of the games, like that, especially the 3 that I played, like they change it up every time, and I'm like, I liked it in 1, and then 2, I think I actually liked 2 more because they simplified it, and then I went to Yakuza 0, and it got like complicated again. I was like, damn it, because I'm not like figuring out all the secret combos and stuff I need. I'm just button mashing through those things.
I'm comboing people like crazy, doing all kinds of cool moves. Like at first, like through most of the first game, I was kind of button mashing a lot through it. But at this point, I've like learned it. I've like put myself at like, I think I'm like an A tier, like Yakuza player. Like I'm really, really good, but I'm not S rank because there's shit that I just can't do.
Yeah.
There's a couple abilities that like the timing and everything is just like, I can't get it right. But there's so many of these, that's why I love getting all these other abilities and just becoming like a beast and just doing cool, awesome, like heat actions. And just, even when you're not doing heat actions and you just do like pick up something in the world and beat something, there's always all this cool shit that's like always happening in the fights. And I love it. And I love like the Coliseum and just getting in there and like being able to fight a ton of the opponents. And to Cam's point earlier, like I like that they have the attention to detail to like all the fighting and the fighting styles. And like you'll fight a boxer and he fights like a boxer. You fight a UFC guy, he tries to grapple you and get you on the ground. You fight a judo guy and he's just like a tank and like takes a ton of hits. And like it's just awesome to see all the different, like, even luchadors.
You fight a tiger and it's just a fucking tiger.
Yeah. Dude, that was so awesome because like right before I did that, I think the guy, I had done the one mission where I got this move called the Tiger Drop from Master Komaki, and the conversation he has with Komaki is he's like, "Have you ever fought a tiger?" And he's like, "No," and he's like, "But if you do, let me know." And then you got went and fought a fucking tiger, and I was like, "I got to tell Komaki about this." And so I was like, but yeah, like I really love I love all that. And the thing I like a lot, I'll wrap it up because I know we're going a bit, but the thing I like a lot about Yakuza 0 is the fact that it is like a prequel. Like it's a prequel that's done really, really, really well. And it's fun to see people in like crazy 80s clothes, like the bartender from Serena, and like she has like crazy hair and like the like crazy like blouse with like the shoulder pads or whatever. And like it's just funny to see all these different characters when they're like young, and some characters don't even exist, and they do a lot with like joking about the future. And like I don't want to get into some things, but then like there's a fortune teller that like tells you about your future, and it's just like Yakuza 1, Yakuza 2, Yakuza 3, like, but when you just pull little snippets of it and the way she tells it to him, he's like astounded that this would be his future. And it's so funny, even like with Haruka, when he's just like, yeah, you'll have a kid, but you could say it's your kid, but you could also say it's not your kid, and both would be correct. And he's just like, what are you talking about? And I'm just like, I think it's so funny where like yeah, it's like, it's so good the way they foreshadow and just joke about things from the future. And that's definitely like what part of it's made it like it really enjoyable for me. And that's why I kind of want to do like a video by itself where I talk about it more. But I kind of think it's interesting how like if you play Yakuza 0 and then go through the series, or if you play the games and then go back to Yakuza 0, which is like, I almost think that's the way you should do it, because I think you get a lot more out of it by like knowing what happens and knowing who these people are, and then just seeing it, especially because like there's some people they don't even set up very well. Like Kashiwagi is like not really a player in Yakuza 0, but I know who he is because I did like a bunch of games with him.
Yeah.
But I just get to see a younger version of him, and even just seeing him in the background, I'm like, oh, this is him and what like he was doing around this time. Like, but if you were just playing this game, like he means nothing to you. He's just a dude.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's the interest. And a lot of the people you run into, I think, would just mean nothing to you. You know.
I mean, it's very much like I say this pretty much with all those things. Like I don't understand the people that like look at the Star Wars movies and say I should watch them chronologically. Like I should watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like, no, like watch them in the order that they were created, because that's like the references they're pulling from are because they're pulling things in from the things that already exist. So like for me playing Kiwami 1, Kiwami 2, and then Yakuza 0, I got some of the references that are specifically to Kiwami 1 and 2, but there were a ton of things in there I'm like, oh, that's probably a reference to one of the other games that came out 3, 4, 5 before Yakuza 0 did, and I just haven't played those yet. In the same way of like a Dragon, I played Like a Dragon, which I know I'm playing at the end of everything that's come out, and so I get the references to 1, 2, and 0, but there's a ton of stuff in there for like 3, 4, 5. I'm not, and 6, and I'm not in the dark on it. Like they make the games stand alone enough that like you don't need to have all those things, but they're going to be littered with Easter eggs and callbacks and references if you know them. Just like, you know, the pocket racer guy.
Yeah.
Like when he comes back game over game and you know, like, or especially in like a Dragon where, you know, some of these guys come back as summons. Like Buster, was Buster Jones? No,
Buster Gary Holmes.
Buster Gary Holmes, yeah. Like he's like one of the first summons you get in that game. It's like, I remember that guy. I remember beating that guy up in the Coliseum. And then like the 2 other games that he would pop up in after that. So like when he pops up in this, I'm like, hey, cool. And if you never played a Yakuza until Like a Dragon, it like none of that history of this character matters. It's just like it's like, okay, this guy is a weird boxer guy and has like big metal gloves, and he's gonna help me in this fight. Cool. So it's fan service. It's those kinds of things done right is what Yakuza is really good for. And yeah, kind of like you touched on, like they do the prequel very well with Yakuza 0, where it's like it's very tongue in cheek with that fortune teller stuff, but it's also, yeah, here's who young Majima was, here's who young Kiryu was, and it's fully in line with the other things we know about those characters if we've played them. If we haven't, it's an introduction to those characters that we will appreciate more over time.
Yeah, and because real quick too, something I forgot to mention is like Kiryu is legit like now one of my favorite protagonists from a game. Like legit, like you might not get it if you just play one or two, and you can easily get hung up on the fact that he's just kind of like a badass, and like that's not even remotely like what is the coolest thing about him. It's like he's such like a intriguing guy that's like good-hearted and always wants to do the right thing, and people always use that to their advantage, but he just tries to like help people, and like he just uses his strength for the benefit of all these other people. And like there's so much other stuff, and he's also just like humble. That's like super reoccurring thing when everybody talks about what a badass he is, and he's like, that's not true at all. Like he's like, I'm just a guy, and I'm like, no, you're an unbeatable monster, but okay. There's so like he's such a like deeper and complex person than you sometimes you might pick up on in like one Yakuza, but when you play all of them, you can kind of see him like grow and be a really interesting guy. And then that's what makes it more interesting when you go back to Yakuza 0, when he does act different. He acts like a younger guy, and he acts like more of a dickhead. Like honestly, like he's more like he's like telling people off and like pushing people around and stuff. And even in the intro, I was like, wow, that's interesting, because old man Kiryu is always the quiet one, kind of laid back, and he's getting messed with. I'm like, young Kiryu's out here looking for trouble. And even at one point he gets into a huge fight and like kind of starts losing, and he says after the fact, he's like, I like thought I could do it. He thought, he was invincible or whatever, and he went in there and he got kicked down. And I'm like, yeah, like that's a totally real thing. And like it's just like another thing I think is cool to go back and see like the prequels. It's literally like, how did this guy act when he was 24 or like 20 whatever, like, and how he acts when he's 30 and 40 and whatever, and he's the master. But like, how does he act when he's low on the totem pole, and he's out here causing trouble for people? And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, it's really interesting to see. And it's especially interesting to see for how much like I love him as who he is as like an adult. It's like interesting to see him be a different guy and be more like hot-headed.
I think that weaker. Also, yeah, I also think that speaks a lot to when they talk about Kiryu maturing in like Kiwami 1 and like at the beginning of that game, you're basically about to become your head of your own family.
Yeah.
And it's it's big and momentous, and it's a big, like, the trust that's being placed in you is huge. And Kiryu is constantly saying, I don't know if I'm up for it. You see his contrite attitude, and it makes sense because you're then in 0, you play through him when he is a wild, hothead. And I mean, he's always a hothead, but his hothead was a lot hotter when he was younger.
Yeah.
And you get to see why he gets called the Dragon of Dojima. Like you see the rise of his legend in Yakuza 0. It's really, really cool. I really like, and that's just something that I really like about his character progression, because his character does evolve over the course of his lifetime, and that's what the Yakuza games are. It's also about like, there's something also very cool the way that Yakuza is also about how Tokyo and Japan changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Where especially in the 80s when he's young, he's there's money. Like there's a great side quest in Yakuza Kiwami where you talk about how the scene used to be back in the 80s, and with this young actress, and you talk about how because of how the economy was bubbling and nobody knew it was going to crash, like all sorts of stuff with this, like money was being like thrown around like crazy. And it's
and it very much literally is when you go play Yakuza 0. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's great that they explore that, and it's so cool. But one of my favorite things about that is like the Yakuza games are about how times change and people change. Kiryu in the 80s would never end up where Kiryu ends up by the end of Yakuza 6. The journey of Kiryu's life is it's a very it can be considered very sad and bitter, but he's not the kind of man who would see it that way.
Yeah.
He what he takes for what he appreciates about his own life and what he's able to accomplish and protect and everything like that. It's just like, it tells that story over the course of his lifetime and over a course of like a 30-year chunk of Japan.
Yeah.
30, 40 year chunk of Japan, and like how much things have changed. And also speaks to like if you keep up with like how like what's going on with the Yakuza in Japan today, like the circumstances of organizations in Japan and what are recognized and everything like that, that Yakuza games kind of tackle a little bit. Because like it's an awesome deep game that has a lot of depth about culture and speaks a lot to a lot of deep thematic elements. But I hands down, kind of funny. Just did a like PlayStation characters ranking bracket where they like tournament style, and I was shocked that they didn't include Kiryu in it. Because when they put out the siren call saying, "Hey, who do you want to see in this bracket?" My first thought was, I want to see Kazuma Kiryu. I want to see Kiryu in that because he, to me, I mean, carried the banner for PlayStation greatness through the end of the PS2 era, going through all the way through PS3 and PS4. Yakuza games are like the must-play games that people talk about. And so, like, that's, in my mind, Kazuma Kiryu is, like, potentially up there to be, like, my favorite PlayStation character. So.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Ichiban picks up that mantle and continues on in the new Like a Dragon era. I enjoy him already immensely so far. So
I'm excited to get into it, man. I'm excited to play it.
Yeah.
That's why, like, based on the series and how they're able to always add new people and make me care about them, I'm sure I'll end up loving him too, and he'll probably be, and even his friends and his crew and all the new characters that you'll meet there, I'm sure I'll get invested in them too.
Yeah. And that's
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, there's even a stark difference in that philosophy for Like a Dragon, because like you have a party of characters a la an RPG. And unlike, minor spoilers for Yakuza Kiwami, the very first game, like very few people make it out of that game alive. So like a lot of the early Yakuza games are like having to rebuild a cast of characters each time around. And Like a Dragon does not do that. Like, some characters obviously do kind of perish, but they're mostly on like the bad guy side of things. And your team, your crew lives to fight the next battles, and I'll be curious to see how that continues compared to the Kiryu years, especially those early Kiryu years that I know of. The last thing I was going to say, and then I'll throw it to you for kind of a final word there, Frank, was I also appreciate that in the 4 Yakuza games I've played, I've been a Yakuza member for very little time.
Yeah. I thought even in 0, I thought this is him being a Yakuza, right? This is how he becomes the Nope, he's out.
Nope, he's kicked out again. Or the first time, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, man, they really go through like hoops to make sure you are not a criminal.
Yeah.
And even though you're doing criminal activity, but you are not affiliated with their organization.
Mm-hmm. What were you going to say, Frank?
The last thing I want to give a shout out to too is kind of like Cam brought up, the tattoos. Like, they're always, besides the fact they're always beautiful and awesome, they actually mean a lot of times in the story of like who has what and what their tattoo is. Like, he brought up the thing that's kind of cool between Kiryu and Nishiki, where Kiryu has the dragon tattoo and Nishiki has the koi swimming upstream, and then that's like a folk tale in Japan about like the koi swimming upstream and jumping through the gate to become a dragon. So that's like a cool kind of like, that's kind of threaded into the story there. And there's other characters that show up that have other tattoos that mean other things in other games. And one I really like that they don't even really ever call out or explain, I just kind of picked up on it, is there's a character that has a lot of reason to hate Kiryu, and then their tattoo is a guy killing a dragon, like just slicing it into pieces like it's sushi. And that's when I was like they never call it out. You just see his tattoo when he's like, and I know because of the story, he hates, like, he has reason to hate Kiryu. And I'm like, man, that's so cool. Like, his tattoo is literally like, I'm going to kill the dragon. Like, and I was like, man, that's so, that like, it's so cool that even though they never explain it or call it out, like when a guy just throws off his shirt, it's like you can get a bunch of information about like who they are or what their part of the story is based off of like a really elegant tattoo.
Indeed. Great, fun Yakuza chat there. Let's wrap things up. Cam, you specifically wanted to talk kind of your prep coming into Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker. And I can add a little bit here because I'm, certainly continuing my way through as well. But what are you doing to prep for Endwalker here?
So the biggest thing I'm doing to prep for Endwalker is I am. So basically, for the last 2 weeks, I have been leveling up Dragoon. A couple weeks ago, they released the details about class changes, and unfortunately, Dark Knight is a lot of problems that a lot of Dark Knight players have been vocalizing for the last couple of years are not being addressed. On top of that, there is a massive there is a skill called Delirium, which allows you to use a skill that normally you have to build up a gauge for, and then you launch it, but allows you for a set period of time to, as long as that ability is active, Delirium, you can use one of these two skills over and over again, as much as you're able to. And so for a lot of Dark Knights, myself included, we've built out skill speed abilities. Now, the biggest problem with the Dark Knights is that they are a mix of, they have magic abilities as well as skill abilities. And the problem with that is you either want to skew one way or the other when it comes to your materia end game stuff. And I don't want to get too into the weeds here, but basically, when I use this ability and I have a full gauge, I can get anywhere from 7 to 8, and one time I even got 9 blood spillers, which is the ability that one of the abilities you can use with it. They're now making a massive change where Delirium is going to only have 3 stacks, and so they are basically nerfing one of the only damage outputs for, like, big damage outputs for Dark Knights. They're not addressing the magic skill imbalance in their skill sets, and on top of that, there's several things about Dark Knights as tanks that have been super beneficial, but the recent changes they're making to the other tanks make them vastly superior to Dark Knights. And I honestly don't like the changes they're making to it. So when Endwalker comes out, I'm going to be switching classes. They're bringing out 2 new classes, Reaper and Sage, and I've decided to go Reaper. So I'm going to start picking up Reaper, which means I'm probably going to actually have a delay on Endwalker content as far as like the actual game's content while I level up my Reaper and do that.
Because that just means you have to like completely start over, right? Like you just have to roll a new character. Okay.
Nope, no new character. The great thing about Final Fantasy XIV is you create a single character, and that single character can be all the classes.
Okay.
And some of the classes don't start at level 1. Some of them start at level 30, or start at level 50, 60, etc. Reaper, for example, will start out at level 70. So I'll have to beef up 10 levels so I can take on Endwalker content proper. I'm okay with that. But in order to prepare myself, because I have not played DPS at all, Trevor knows this. I was a tank main.
Yeah.
Every step of the way in my Final Fantasy XIV career. I've dabbled a little bit in some DPS with like Red Mage and whatnot and Dancer, but like I have not leveled those really at all. And instead, I've just been being a tank. I was a warrior, then Dark Knight, and I've dabbled into Gunbreaker a little bit, but I was decidedly a Dark Knight player. That's changed. In order to get used to doing DPS, I started a Lancer. Like I started doing the Lancer quest line. Got all the way through. I'm currently now, after 2.5 weeks-ish, I'm a level 60 Dragoon. And I've gotten to the point now where I feel very comfortable with like Dragoon, that I feel like, okay, this is cool. I know directional stuff. I know, positional, etc. I feel prepared to be able to take on Reaper with their abilities and directional abilities that were described in the job trailer. So I'm feeling good about that. I'm feeling good. I'm excited to start on that journey. And so I've been doing a lot of that as far as my, like, what I've been doing with my time in Final Fantasy XIV, which it's been fun. It's fun. Once you get into doing dungeons, it's a lot easier, but it's been fun totally switching up my role. It's been fun, like, having like completely different responsibilities. And it's also been fun and sometimes painful to kind of guide tanks, especially Sprout, which are new player tanks who don't know everything yet. I really have enjoyed being kind of like playing a little bit of a mentorship, being like, hey, heads up, tank stance, you have it off. We had one guy we were doing a dungeon of run with where it was where they kept turning their tank stance off in the middle of a fight, and it was just pissing me off entirely. And I said, if you turn off your tank stance one more time, like, we're booting you. And it's like, we don't know if he can even read English because he's not responded to any of our messages about the tank stance. And I'm like, he's just trolling at this point. If you turn it off, we're booting you.
I mean, or so as somebody who does not chat often, I will speak in defense. Or he's maybe a console player, and it's real tough to try and chat.
That was brought up.
If you're a console player. Yeah.
That was brought up. That was totally brought up in the conversations. And there was, listen, we didn't end up booting him.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of leeway was given.
Yeah.
In consideration to maybe doesn't speak English, maybe is a console player. Lots of leeway was given.
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy XIV is not a game where it's like, we wipe once, we're booting the problem person.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how the game works. The culture in that game is entirely different from every other MMO. To the point where, did he turn off his tank stance? Yeah. Did I pretend to ignore it so we didn't boot him from the party because we were at the boss finally? Sure. You know, I gave some leeway. We finished the dungeon. And then I decidedly made sure that if I ever saw him in a party again, I would let everybody else know the situation so we could be upfront about it. But that'll probably never happen. And hopefully that they learn. Because they did have a Sprout icon, so they're new.
Yeah.
And that's something that I like. I've really enjoyed talking to tanks and being like, yeah, they're like, so what should I do? And I like just give them the basic tank 101, and it's been fun. Being able to do that as I'm a DPS, and honestly, I will be completely and totally honest. I understand why Dragoons can absolutely beef their rotation now. That rotation is not as easy to keep up as you would think. There is a fine line between pulling it off completely and just like owning and being great and putting out tons of damage, and then messing up just a little bit and not doing any damage at all. Like, there is a fine line that if you cross it, you screw up. You basically wasted an entire rotation. You have to start over.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot more understanding of that. Now, on the flip side of that, I have not experienced how Dragoons die so much yet. Dragoons often die. As a tank, I've often wondered how they die so easily. Outside of having a low threshold HP pool, whatever the issue is. And then I started getting all my jumps. And I'm like, I now know how a lot of them die. They commit to including their jumps into the rotation. And so they're stuck in a place. And then they get killed for it. But since I know that, I can avoid that. And so far, I've been very successful about avoiding that.
There you go.
But yeah, no, I now have a lot more understanding of why are Lancers / Dragoons not doing as much damage as they should be. Sometimes you're just messing up your rotation. You can't get it right. It's tough. I feel you. I feel you on that.
There you go.
So,
if nothing else, I appreciate that you will maybe rag on DPS less now that you're playing DPS.
Well, most of the time I make fun of you guys just because of long queue times. And to be honest, when you're leveling, it's like you can use that opportunity to do leave quests.
Yep.
And do stuff to kind of kill time. So I've been experiencing, that's something new for me.
Yeah, there you go.
I've never had a 30-minute long wait time.
Yeah,
I never ended up being number 60 something in queue.
I didn't have to be with these peasants.
Yeah, it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
What is this? What is this? A queue for poor people?
Mm-hmm.
What is a queue for DPS? What is this?
Yeah.
No, I'm experiencing that, and it's but also I understand because there's 16 DPS jobs.
Yeah, there you go. So on my side of things to prep for Endwalker, I last night went and did the 5.1. I finished Shadowbringers a couple weeks ago, I guess.
We did it together. It was cool.
Yeah. And so I did the 5.1 stuff yesterday, which starts off pretty early with the dungeon in 5.1. And then like for the rest of them, I think it's like near the end of the patch.
5.2 has it kind of in the middle.
Yeah,
and then 5.3 is at the end.
Yeah. In the 5.11, it's the first time it was like, you do not meet the item limit. And I was like, oh yeah,
shit. Eye level. Welcome to eye level.
I need, like, because everything else I've been playing, like especially the Menfina's earring that you get as like pre-order or whatever, like that has helped level up, from level 1. It helps you like level up to level 70, I think, for any class.
Level 80, yeah.
Oh, is it level 80? So yeah,
all the way up to 80. Yeah,
you get
that earring has been a
clutch.
godsend.
Yeah.
That thing is so good.
Yeah,
and like combining it with like the other experience boost bonuses.
Yeah,
so good.
Yeah,
so good. I'm leveling up an Arcanist right now.
There you go.
Because I kind of want to do Summoner. Summoner seems cool.
Cool. But yeah, so that like that item level was like also like level 455 or whatever. So like playing through the rest of the game that is like all that old content, like that was doing a great job of kind of like offsetting my item level and getting me to wherever I needed to get. And so now that I'm like at the like actual content level that you're supposed to be playing at, and haven't done the thing of like grinding all of these dungeons until you get that high level gear, I was like, shit, screw it, I'm just gonna go. I've got a couple million gil. I'm just gonna go buy shit from the marketplace. So I went to the marketplace and bought whatever like the high level gear I could get, and got my item level up to like 4 in the 460s or something like that. So should be fine for at least a bit now. And I was like, well, this was a new thing that I had to worry about. But then I went and did that dungeon with the trust system, which is basically the AI kind of like filling in those other roles. And I was telling you, Cam, like I got through it. It took half of the time of like half of the 90-minute time limit or whatever to get through it, but I got through it. And I was like, yeah, I imagine between waiting for the queue and then going through the thing probably would have evened out. So at least I didn't have to, like embarrass myself among other people doing it this way. So yeah, just kind of chipping my way through the patch stuff. Basically I'm off today and tomorrow, so I'll get as far as I can there. Should be able to like get caught up by the time Endwalker actually comes out. But then I realized like, oh, I'm also going to Disneyland, in a week and a half or whatever. So I'm going to be gone for like the, 4 days in the like, flurry of people hopping in playing Endwalker, which probably going to be good in that like I'm not going to get overwhelmed with like trying to get into the game. But then I'm also going to, immediately be behind people. So oops. But it'll be
somewhat good though, because then some people will be able to get in and like write guides and stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So you'll have like an edge.
Exactly. The guides that I have relied upon the entire time will be out by the time I'm actually trying to do the Endwalker dungeons and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in the Endwalker journey of things. Looking forward to hopping into it. Admittedly, and this will be he's back just in time to hear how much sacrilege this will be for Cameron. But as I was playing through the 5.1 stuff, I was just skipping every cutscene, just being like, I just need to get through this at this point. I don't care. Just get me through these. Yeah, I appreciate that was immediately Cameron hates that. My plan is I'm going to go and watch like hey, what happened in these things, or I'll go back and actually watch the cutscenes. Because
I'm sorry, bitch, you did what?
I skipped through most of the cutscenes in 5.1 stuff.
Oh my gosh, Trevor.
Like when Estinian came up, I was like, okay, I can't skip this because I know Chloe would, never let me hear the end of it or whatever. And especially like getting to play as Estinian at the end of 5.1, I was like, oh, this was Chloe's, best life. I mean, like, I know.
No, this is this bitch sigh that I'm giving right now.
That's fine. I know the gist of what I'm trying to do in these missions, but I'm fine. Like, I'm fine just kind of skipping through and not really paying attention to the new
something in the first 30 levels of a Realm Reborn, I'd understand.
Mm-hmm.
If you were skipping things in Realm Reborn, I'd be like, I wouldn't suggest it, but I understand. You are in post Shadowbringers patch content.
Yeah.
Like, you are.
anything I really need to know, I know I can just ask you and be like, hey, Cam, what do I need to know going into Endwalker?
Do you even know what the point of your, like, what you were trying to do?
What I'm trying to do now is save my friends who are still stuck in the Crystal Realm. Right?
In the sword.
That so like they're still asleep in like the source, and so I'm in the I'm going between the first and the source and trying to like uncover the way to wake them up. I know that
you know the purpose of the dungeon you were in?
No. no idea the purpose of the dungeon I was in. I fought a guy in a castle. He lit stuff on fire. He lit me on fire, and then I could put the fire out by going and walking into drapes. I know that. That's what I know of that of that dungeon.
Oh my gosh, that's such an important. Okay.
I love when I do this to Cameron. Hey, you should be happy that I remembered the cat guy.
How would you forget Grahatia?
Because he was from 200 hours ago.
Gosh.
And he was from like one minor quest line in the post Realm Reborn stuff, and I had not thought about him since. So yeah. But he popped up and I was like, hey, it's that guy. And I texted you or sent you a DM about it. So,
Yeah, you did.
Be happy that, pat on the back for me for remembering who he was. But yeah.
You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to play Life is Strange. The latest
You're playing True Colors and be like, I just skipped everything, Trevor.
I just skipped everything.
Me. That's fair.
I skipped everything. And you know what? I made decisions.
Yep.
And it was bad. And I don't even care. I hope you know that. And guess what? I contacted Don't Nod. They understood my playthrough. It's now the canon playthrough. Live with that, Trevor.
Touche, Cameron.
My gosh, that is. I did not expect to be so frustrated by that.
I specifically waited until you were back on headset to drop that nugget. So,
and it does not help that I left because I thought my mom was calling with it. Like she called and she said, "Please call me back." I'm like, "Oh, this must be serious," because like. Full disclosure, we've dealt with some, like, my uncle just died, and, like, we've been dealing with some stuff in our family lately, and so I thought something really bad had happened, and it turns out it's something called a Pogo Pass. I don't even know what the hell it is. Mom wants to know if I want it for Christmas. I don't know what's going on with that, and then I come back and I hear this bullshit, and it's like, what the actual fuck just happened to me in the last, like, 3 minutes of my life?
It's a roller coaster.
I just literally was like, did something happen with Dad? Because he's up at Uncle Doug's funeral. Is he okay? Is is Mom okay? Because she's still over in Reno with Sarah, my younger sister. Did something happen with my Aunt Duffy? What happened? I was prepared for something bad, and then it's something called a fucking Pogo Pass. And I'm like, can I call you back in like 5? Can I like let you know in 5 or 10 minutes? And she's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, that's fine. I was like, don't say it's fine, and then you do a please call me like serious text message, Jesus. And then I come back and Trevor's just like, yeah, so like these cutscenes and all. I'm like, 5. Whatever,
See, here's the thing though. I have faith in the community that there are going to be a ton of explainer videos out there. For what I might have missed, especially because you're going to have a ton of people that played this 2 years ago when it came out and are going to like our friend Lauren, shout out to Beasley, who's hopping back in and being like, I don't remember any of this stuff. So, I'm sure they're, plus again, I can go back and rewatch the cutscenes. I can do those. I'm just trying to hit this deadline of let me finish the patch stuff so I can be and also like I didn't do it until I realized, oh shit, I might not be leveled up enough to do these dungeons, so let me go ahead and skip through the cutscenes so I can do the important stuff of like finding out where those pain points are going to be. So yeah, I blame the game on giving me this sense of urgency at this point, but again, it's also just fun to know that it's going to get a rise out of Cameron, so haha. But
you haven't even done any of the Eden content. We need to run through that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, we tried to do the Coils Bahamut, and when we did that, I was like, oh, and there's hope for doing the Eden stuff, doing the Alexandria stuff, or the Alexander stuff.
Oh, I've never done the Alexander stuff. I have no idea how you even get that started.
The is Eden's not the Robin Astor or like the basically. Oh, and Jarrett now wants to do the Nier raids and stuff, which I didn't even know were a thing. I would have guessed they were like a time exclusive kind of thing.
No, they are the exclusive raid content for Shadowbringers.
Yeah.
We have near stuff for Shadowbringers in Stormblood. It was the Final Fantasy Tactics /12.
Okay.
No, that's a like special thing that was like a single trial.
The Monster Hunter.
The Monster Hunter stuff is like a trial stuff.
Yeah.
That
Got it.
That in itself was fun and cool. But the flip side of that, the actual raid stuff was the Final Fantasy Tactics /12 Evilise, Return to Evilise.
Yeah.
So there was that. That was for Stormblood, and then Heaven's Word was the ruined cities of the Black and White Mages, and like detailing the war between the White Mages and Black Mages that led to one of the worst calamities that flooded the world. That's one thing. Those are cool dungeons because it's also Sky Pirate themed. So you basically join forces with some Sky Pirates to take on Void Sent from the World of Darkness, and like how it relates to like the history of the world. It's super cool.
There you go. So see, there's plenty of stuff still for me to do in Final Fantasy XIV. So.
Oh yeah, there is. I've not even done everything yet.
Oh yeah, no, I know. The fact that I've done the Hildebrand stuff, and you were like, oh, I've never done that. I was like, no.
I need to do Hildebrand this week, and then I also need to do one last quest, like the very final quest of Shadowbringers that they put out. That's like it's an emotional quest, so I'm not prepared for it yet.
All right, there you go. So yeah, that's our prep for going into Final Fantasy XIV, and me just tormenting Cameron with how little I care about the story and lore compared to him. Hooray! So yeah, that is going to do it for this episode of That Nerdy Site Show. Thank you guys for joining me. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to our other podcast, That D Plus Show. The most recent episode at the time of this is our episode about Hawkeye, which had just premiered on Disney Plus last week, and it was definitely a fun time. So I recommend people check that out.
Also, I didn't call it out at all in that episode, but that was our 100th episode of That D Plus Show.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even realize.
Yep. Cool, great shout out. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Cam? Is it just going to be go watch every cutscene of Final Fantasy XIV?
No, that's just for you, Trevor. That's your assignment for today.
Homework
there for that. No, I wanted to give a massive shout out to our friends over at Point in Progress. In particular, they actually have been doing a really awesome job of tackling they're recently doing the they're doing their own version of the D plus stuff, but they're usually doing it with something like right now Mario Rivera and Sai are doing Marvel movies, like all the Marvel superhero movies.
Yeah, the MCU, the Marvel Class University or whatever it was, whatever. No, it's something that abbreviates to MCU.
Yeah, they're doing that, but more importantly, or not more importantly. On a side note of that, and specifically in regards to Final Fantasy XIV, they have a podcast hosted by our good friends Harv and Fiona called Fantasy in Progress, and they have been recapping and going over everything. Fia's going through Final Fantasy XIV for her first time. I watched them live stream them doing 5.3. And that was a blast. They're doing great stuff over at Point in Progress, but in particular, it's been a lot of fun watching them go through and podcast about Final Fantasy XIV. So
cool. Great shout out. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will kind of shout out the Let's Plays that I think I referenced kind of throughout this episode from last week. There's a That Nerdy Site Plays of Loop Hero, as well as kind of the opening chapter of Guardians of the Galaxy that you can see over on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. And then kind of bouncing off of Frank's recommendation, that D Plus show is about to go into our our holiday month, not our Halloween month. We did that last month. Our holiday month here in December, where we're going to be doing stuff like the Santa Claus 2, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, Jingle All the Way, and then at least one other thing. I think as I was going through, I think the final episode of the month/year probably going to be Book of Boba Fett rather than a fifth holiday movie, but we'll see. So yeah, check out that D Plus for all that fun stuff. And if you want to watch kind of the prequels not the prequels, if you want to watch The Santa Claus or Lost Home Alone, we did those last year as part of our holiday month. So there are already episodes out there for you. But yeah, that is going to do it. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please feel free to rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells on YouTube, comment on videos, I guess. Yeah, all that good stuff. Thank you again for listening. Thank you guys for joining me. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.